So I'm going to be setting up my palette. So yeah, scrape off this raw umber. And so I'm gonna be starting with, here I have some Michael Harding Kremnitz White. That is a lead white. I have like a Rublev lead white that I use sometimes. Another thing that that I do sometimes is I'll squirt my paint onto a piece of paper towel, and the paper towel will absorb the oil because sometimes they're too oily, and I like to keep it a little bit more dry because I can always just add the oil with my medium. Yeah. So there's a bit of lead white. You want to be careful when you're using lead white because it's quite toxic. Just like don't put it in your mouth. Then I'll be using some Old Holland Yellow Ochre Deep. This is like a pretty limited palette. And then after that, I have some raw sienna, Michael Harding. No, sorry, this is Old Holland. Old Holland, raw sienna. And then I got some Michael Harding genuine Chinese vermilion. It's the expensive stuff. Yeah, I mean, I like it. I don't really like painting with earth reds. So, oh, also, especially when I don't usually use cadmium orange, but if you're painting like a darker skinned model, you definitely want some cadmium orange. Because there's just like really nice, like warm, deep, like flesh tones that you can't really get without it. And then ivory black. That's Old Holland. So if we're just painting a pretty simple portrait, I try and keep my palette as limited as possible. It makes it just simpler for me. Don't really need blue. I might use it, might not, but you can get like a decent blue with just the white and the ivory black. So I'm now going to be mixing some colors for the background. I'm gonna see how close that is. Looks pretty close. So now that I have a nice pile of it, I'm gonna paint the background. I'm just sort of scrubbing that in. Let's see. Yeah, it's a little like a little warm and red, but like I said, I'm going to be doing layers of paint on top of each other. So it might be nice to kind of have that red shine through. I might just go ahead and put in my lightest light. We got this nice white shirt. So again, loading up my brush, getting that white. I mean, I don't want it to be pure white. So I'm gonna get a little bit of my background. And put in that light shape. I will be honest with you guys. Normally I would like have what you want. I didn't get to cover the imprimatura because this is obviously white canvas that's been toned, and you do that with, you know, raw umber, black and white, raw sienna. I actually honestly just do it with like my paint cleaner that I wash my brushes in. There's like sludge on the bottom. And I just sort of use that to stone my canvases, and it's like the perfect like gray. And you want it to be a mid-tone. And I'll talk about like mid-tones and stuff like that more. But you want it to be mid-tone so that you can paint sort of the darks and the lights into it. Where this is clearly kind of like a light. Not really that much of a mid-tone. And then I'm gonna go ahead and put in my darkest dark. And so I'm just, you know, I'm definitely trying to make sure I don't have white in here. But I'm just sort of getting a little bit of orange, a little bit of red, raw sienna. I don't use loads of yellow ochre in my darks because, like I said, it's raw sienna is a little bit more transparent. And I try and keep my darks like a bit more transparent if I can. Just gonna go ahead and sort of lay that in. And I got a bit of glare, and one way to fix glare is sort of tilt your canvas forward if you can. Or, that seemed to help a little bit, or just tilt it away from the window. That seemed to help. And so I'm trying to make sure that I have a brush for my darks, and I have a brush for my background, and I have a brush for my lights. Alright, now I'm gonna go ahead and find a few more darks in the face. I'm gonna go ahead and mix up a quick value for the shirt. A bit more of all the other colors. Okay. Get some more white. And as you can see, I sort of just have like one single value for the big shape, because there's obviously a lot of like nuances and subtle like value changes and color changes, but just keeping it simple. Now I'm gonna mix a flesh tone. So I'm going to get a brush, get my oil, not too much white, lots of orange, some red. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it could be still more orange. Maybe the yellow ochre will help me get that warmth. So let's try. So this is basically there's like, I try and think of it as like there's like 4 values if you're really gonna try and keep it simple. There's like the darks, the midtones, the light, and then the highlights. And right now we have the darks, and then we're not really doing the midtones because we're just trying to keep it simple. Those will come later in transitions. And then the light, and then the highlights we're also not doing. And that would be, you know, these nice cool highlights on the forehead or in the eyes, the tip of the nose. So we're just working with light and dark. And I want to, you know, make sure I'm like staying under control, not getting it too messy. But I definitely am sort of making adjustments where I think necessary in terms of drawing and shapes, etc. You can tell I'm using quite like a broad brush. And I'm also not painting with loads of paint. I'm sort of just like scraping it in. And I'm losing a bit of information, but it's important to keep the painting soft. You don't want to have these like thickly painted brush strokes next to another thickly painted brush stroke with a really like sharp line, sort of like what I have there. So what I'm going to do, I sort of just like soften it. And I'll be able to go in later and put like a nice brush stroke that is more exact as I get more specific with my drawing. I mean, I've lost like quite a bit of my drawing, but that's okay. Where'd he go? He's gone. Okay, cool.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'll find you again, don't worry.